Welcome to the Focused Fundraiser. This is where I get to spend time with seasoned fundraisers discussing what they've learned and giving you their hard-earned wisdom on what moves a mission forward. Because something that we believe is doing more does not lead to success. Focusing on what matters most does. And today I'm talking with Mary Rockwell Thon, who leads advancement at MENTOR Vermont. And after 20 years raising money across some of the state's most important causes like fundraising for child abuse prevention, Alzheimer's research, Girl Scouts, she knows how to make a case that moves people. So if you've ever felt like you've struggled to turn a mission into actual gifts, this conversation is for you. Can't wait to dive into it. Mary, welcome. Start us off by sharing a bit about yourself and your path and history into the nonprofit sector.
Yeah, I think like many fundraisers, it was sort of an accidental career. I started teaching, I was in education. And then after our children were born, I went into college ministry and had to raise funds for my own salary, which is a whole other type of fundraising. And I didn't think I enjoyed fundraising. And it turns out I just hadn't been trained well enough as to what to do and how to do it. And so after that, I ended up working for the Girl Scouts, which was an organization that I had been involved in growing up and then as a leader for my own daughters. And it was a cause that I really believed in. And so I was doing some community outreach and a little bit of fundraising, kind of dipped my toe in that. And then after losing my mother to Alzheimer's, I saw a job posting for the Alzheimer's Association Vermont chapter. And I thought, well, this could be, I'm very mission driven, obviously. And thought this could be something that I could do to take a bad situation and make some good come from it. And so I became a development manager. It was very event oriented. The Walk to End Alzheimer's is one of the biggest event fundraisers, peer to peer fundraisers in the country, and really enjoyed it and found out I was really actually very numbers motivated. And I loved seeing those numbers going up and having goals and hitting them. And so each of my positions along the way has been a little bit bigger, a little bit more responsibility, learning different skills each time. And so I find myself as both fundraiser and marketing communications, as many of us are. And I'm really loving working for Mentor Vermont and really getting to spread the message about mentoring and how it is great for everybody involved.
So let's take a step back. When you said when you first started, you didn't have the trainings, you didn't think you liked fundraising. I'm curious to know, like looking back now, what are those training pieces that you had to learn? Somebody that maybe is feeling the same way that they don't like fundraising, maybe they just need to get this training in. What would you recommend?
Right. So I think some of it was, again, I was raising for my own salary specifically, but still I wasn't taught how to talk about it in a donor-centric way. Why would that person want to give for my, so it was all about me and the work that I was doing. And so didn't know how to speak donor-centrically. I didn't know how to write donor communications. I didn't know how to do any of that. They just kind of said, "Go and ask people for money," and that felt very uncomfortable. So once I've learned the ways to do it that are really take the donor into more consideration, then it became easier to do.
Mm, that's a very powerful lesson to learn. And what you're talking about is, at the heart of it, in my opinion, is storytelling with communications. What is this? From your experience, what is a storytelling habit that you see fundraisers that they should drop, and one that you think they should add?
Um, so they definitely don't need to tell stories about what your organization is doing, like the ins and outs and the programs that we have and how we make things happen. You wanna tell the story of the people that you are benefiting. Who are your beneficiaries? And tell the stories about how what the donor has done has made a difference. Whether your beneficiary is a child or a forest or an animal or whatever it might be, how did that donor make a difference in the life of that beneficiary?
Yeah, and making the organization the guide of that hero journey, right? Is that what you're talking through too? Is just the organization is how they know that hero is going to make it to the positive outcome.
Right, right, and you aren't this they're not giving they give to you, but they're really giving to the beneficiary, and so that's what they wanna hear about. They don't care about your budgets and your I mean, some people might, but most people just wanna hear the good that they've done.
So raising money across all these different organization types, curious to know, looking back, what do you feel like transfers from cause to cause that you can pull, and what did you have to unlearn each time when you started at each organization?
Interesting question. In all of my cases, I was working for a local chapter of a bigger organization, just kind of happened that way. And so I had to learn that role and how the local organization fit into the bigger one. Here in Vermont, as maybe some other rural places, people wanna know what benefits Vermont, and so that held constant through all of them. How did the money going to the larger Alzheimer's Association benefit folks here in Vermont, right? They wanna know that. So that definitely held true across, finding those folks that really are connected to your mission each time, and they were a little bit different each time, so I had to learn to know some new people, and why they were motivated to give to that particular organization. So those were new things I needed to learn each time.
Were each one you had mentioned, the I forget which one it was, but, it was very events heavy.
Yeah, it was.
Were there different fundraising styles that you had to learn as well as you moved across?
Absolutely. So events planning is very different than major donor relations, right? And that's still something I'm gaining experience in. And how do I get to know those people? And how do I know what motivates them and what their giving style is? And how I can talk about our organization and our stories in a way that resonates with them. And that's very different from corporate giving and how I find those businesses that want to be involved in our mission. And so it's all a little different each time. And adding on to that has been really helpful so that I can see the full spectrum of fundraising skills.
So, something you've talked about before is best practice fundraising or ethical fundraising. Um, where do you see fundraisers? Do you see fundraisers crossing a line and they might not even realize that they're kind of getting out of the boundaries of ethical fundraising and communications? How do you coach your team to raise more without going across that line?
Right. I will say I'm thankful that I haven't seen a whole lot of people crossing ethical lines. I think best practices for talking about your beneficiaries in an asset-based way rather than a negative way is something you see a lot of. It's the sad puppy. It's, the instead of talking about here's the assets our community has that we're building on to improve the lives of our beneficiaries, right? Talking in a positive way. I see people dance around that a lot. I'm starting to see things in the AI world that I don't like, where people are using AI generated images and not talking about it. I think that's something we're all starting to reckon with in the nonprofit world is how do we use AI in a beneficial way? So that's going to be tricky.
I agree. Let's talk about that for a bit. What's been your approach so far with AI?
I've used very little of it, I'll be honest. And our organization, Mentor Vermont, is starting to think about an AI policy and educating ourselves on what that should look like and what that means. Because I think that's important and it keeps you within the boundaries of what you've decided as an organization. Um, I won't use art that's generated. I have artists in my family, and I respect their skills, and I don't want to use things that have been stolen from artists and used in AI. And I might use it as a prompt starter for me when I'm looking at the blank page and I'm not sure how to start writing something. But then I just take those basics and rewrite it myself. I think it's can be obvious when someone hasn't done that. That can be risky to do.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of what you're talking about too is, or you're touching on, is disclosure in ethical communications, which is we're talking about AI like with images and disclosing what's real and what's not, but that spans across the stories that you're telling of real names or fake stories that encompass a real story, that type of thing as well, right?
Absolutely. Sometimes you need to create a composite person that you talk about in your communications. And you can say things like, someone like John has done this, or, so if you don't have someone who's willing to completely share their story, then you might need to do that. But as long as it's clear that you're doing that.
So let's talk about donor retention because we're talking. You had mentioned events based and major donors. I think everybody chases new donors. Donor attribution or retention though it gets less attention. What have you tested to keep your donors you already have? Like how much effort do you put into that versus getting new donors? I'm curious your thoughts on donor retention.
Yeah, and we're pretty small. We have a pretty small donor base, and we're looking to grow that in a small market. Vermont has a lot of nonprofits. It's one third of the economy is nonprofits in Vermont. And so it's a lot of people talking to all the same people. Um, but we are really looking to our board to introduce us to people we don't already know. Can you bring us 5 new donors in the next year so that we can talk to them? We don't need to ask them right away. We'll get to know them and share about our organization, and hopefully they'll become donors. And they don't all need to be large donors. That $10 a month donor often has more lifetime value than one time larger gift giver. So we're looking to people we know to introduce us to people we don't already know. That's our skill right there. And just communication, keeping them up to date on what we're doing and what we think they'd be interested in, and reaching out and having. I have one donor who loves to get together and get an ice cream cone. So we go have ice cream and chat and get to know each other that way. Just those kind of real person connections really keep them around.
I love that. I think everybody needs a donor that grabs ice cream with you.
Absolutely.
I know that mentoring is a slow relationship based outcome, and that is hard to put on a pledge card. How do you make donors feel the impact of something that they might not be able to see immediately or even ever at all?
Yes. So we provide support for mentoring organizations in a lot of different ways, and we're not actually the ones doing direct service. And that can be even harder to talk about when you're a capacity building organization. And so we've begun to talk about donor sized ways that they can understand the work we do. So your gift can provide a training for a mentor so they have more confidence when they meet with their young person. Or your donation can provide training for the mentoring organization to make sure that they are following best practices and able to have safe adults for their young people. And we've begun doing trainings for everyday people in the community, like coaches and teachers and parks and rec and camp staff, on how they can have a mentoring mindset and reach out intentionally to the young people in their lives to make a difference. Because I think when you think about mentoring, for most people, it wasn't in a formal structured mentoring program. It was the neighbor, the scout leader, the coach that really made an impact in your life. And people can really get that. And they're very excited about that. And they want to support that for the young people in their community and help build that web of support. And so that's an easily understood way that people can really get excited about what we do.
Yeah, those are great examples. So something that I'm also thinking about, Mary, is many of the listeners here are on a lean development team of only a few fundraisers or even a mighty one that is the team itself. Where would you recommend, from your experience, that they spend their time, their limited hours that they have each week?
Yeah. So I've always been on a small team. The biggest was 2. And now I'm the one person that does fundraising and communications outside of, obviously, my executive director also does his part in that. And so it can be tough to set those priorities, and it feels like you're always checking your to-do list and something else has jumped to the top. And for me, it's figuring out a schedule of the year of when grants are due, so I know that's where I need to spend my time, or when the communications need to go out, what your appeal schedule might be. So you're not always chasing your tail. But really, it's those things that connect you with your donors and connect you with your community. Those are the things that really will give a payoff. And then I would also suggest, since we're talking about mentoring, that they find a mentor who's a development professional who can really be there and they won't feel as alone. Maybe there's a local AFP chapter that has official mentoring programs, or you can just find someone in your area who you look up to. And they're not going to have all the answers and they don't need to, but they can be there alongside you and be someone you can talk about things with.
Couldn't agree more. I think mentorship for every single person in the world is so powerful, just to have somebody as a sounding board, somebody that's walked down the path before you. And like you said, they might not have been on the same path, but they might have some stories and answers that parallel with what you're going through yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Mary, this has been fantastic. I always end with what I call the tactical. Thank you so much for joining and giving us your wisdom and your hard-earned experience. If you're curious about how DonorDoc can help you find clarity and build retention through smart stewardship, you can visit us at DonorDoc.com to learn more. And we will see you next week.